Welcome. I'm Steve Lentini, and this is my live event every Friday at 1. And I continue to talk about the acorn brain, the small minded thinker that resides in me. And I think all of us, from all the people I've talked to and coached over the years, it's that small minded thinker that holds us back. And so, why I think it's important to recognize it, it's self limiting thinking, it's judgmental thinking, and it holds us back. And a lot of people, and it's okay, they don't question it. They don't begin a journey of self observation or self awareness. And it affects their emotional quotient, and then it affects their success, their leadership. Maybe they tell a story about why the team just doesn't get the message. And they have that victim mentality. It's woe's me. So I think it's important to overcome it because we advance, but you have to prove that to yourself. We advance into unlimited abundance, success, and love. And whenever we hit a plateau or we feel resistance in life, it's because we haven't thought about what is our responsibility in the events, our accountability. So if it's something that you want to investigate on your own and prove it to yourself, I'm going to give you ideas about that. You'll notice a whole new life, a whole new life in where whatever area you address this small minded thinking. So I think it's important. I hope you agree. And if you do, keep listening and keep watching. So today we can see all kinds of examples of small-minded thinking. We have what we call cancel culture and those who think they're woke, like Obama said, President Obama said, well, if you think you're woke, you should get over it. But then we have people on all sides. It doesn't matter what political party, what religion, what anyone's opinion is. What happens is today we have a big make wrong. And then what occurs is both sides are pointing fingers at each other and there's no advancement. It's just they're wrong. Oh no, they're wrong. Oh no, they're wrong. And it's like we've decided to belittle each other, to make each other's thinking wrong. And you can see how it hurts our society, right? Think about politics, how stuck they are. But again, think about how certain religions make the other religion wrong, and some of them have been fighting for thousands of years, and it's the same, in some cases, the same religion, just different factions. But small minded thinking has led us down poor roads, terrible roads. Despotic societies came from small minded thinking, and it started very little, right? Acorn brain, a few thoughts, making one religion wrong, one race wrong, one particular country wrong. And then it just mushroomed into where people were blindly following some of these despotic leaders or movements. And there is no society that's exempt from it. And that within societies, there's small factions of it. If you think of Jim Jones, the cult that ended up drinking the Kool-Aid, the sneaker cult, and then in countries all around the world, there's examples of small-minded thinking where violence breaks out or looting breaks out because people are unhappy with one side or the other for whatever reason. It's wasted energy when we make others wrong, but the only place we can begin is that journey within ourselves. And so if there's a place where you're judging others and you think you're more than some or less than others, that's the place where the acorn brain, that small-minded thinking, I call it, has taken over. But then you can find other examples. If you're in traffic, for example, and you want to close up the space in front of you because someone on the left has just put their signal light on or they're starting to move over, and you get angry instead of relaxing and letting them in. Or someone comes across two lanes to get to an exit instead of going to the next exit, right? Relaxing. we get angry and we're blowing the horn, and it's small-minded thinking. So that's a lower level of it. But on the job, we often make other department managers wrong, or we're gossiping. So if you're gossiping either about neighbors or about coworkers, instead of taking it right to the person, then that's small-minded thinking. There's another example of how you're holding yourself back, because guess what? The person you're talking to about someone else thinks about you. They think, well, as soon as I'm out of the picture, they're going to talk about me. It's more important to manage ourselves, not others. We're not general managers of the universe. So when you notice small-minded thinking, yourself gossiping or getting angry or reacting or complaining about another department at work and not going to the person who runs that department, you might be able to help them with an idea. But if you're just gossiping, talking about others, pointing fingers at others, railing at others on social media because they have a political belief that's different from yours, it's craziness. It's small-minded thinking. And all of those examples are magnified today. They've increased probably tenfold because we're just not allowing for differences and accepting differences. And we're believing our acorn brain. We're believing our small minded thoughts. That's the place to begin the journey. So, how do you overcome it? Well, one, it's like going to the gym. Physically, we're willing to go to the gym, some of us, not me recently, but we notice the resistance at the gym, whether it's weights or we want to add an extra mile on the treadmill, or maybe it's out on the road. We know when we've reached, say, the 3 mile limit, and we've always done 3 miles, and we decide one day to go 3.5 or 4, we push a little more and we build our endurance or we build our muscle. But we can see that. With the acorn brain, we have to go to the neuro gym. We have to work out and begin to look at our thinking. We have to look at it as a gift. That resistance in life is there to build our muscle for living if we recognize it. Now, some people, of course, are stuck in a certain place. They're never going to change, and that's okay. We get to see how that looks. We can see all kinds of people who aren't willing to grow. Even in political parties, we mostly have two political parties, and just look at any convention to see people blindly following and voting the ticket instead of looking at all candidates and listening for things that would help society. I wouldn't vote for people that are just getting up in a campaign and pointing fingers at others and making them wrong. It's small-minded thinking. But I don't vote one ticket. But I'm not saying I'm any better than anyone else. I'm full of SH somewhere. I just understand that what I've learned and taught myself over time is that it's healthier to look at all perspectives, all sides of an issue, including with the people I want to lead the country. And if they sound like they're small-minded thinkers, pointing the fingers at others, they're not going to get my vote. But it isn't just in politics. It's at work. It's in our faiths. We have a whole group of people who believe they have the faith. And there's many that think that way, different faiths. We live in a universe. We live in something limitless. And it's our job to learn to overcome small-minded thinking. Even in colleges and universities today, there's many examples of colleges and universities that are teaching people, and even in high schools and middle schools, our teachers and professors are teaching people, not all, but in many places, what to think, not how to think. And the purpose of a higher education or any education was to take a narrow-minded person, an acorn brain, small-minded thinking, and open their thinking. I mean, for example, recently the University of Austin is being formed by a group of investors, many liberals, who said that liberalism used to be the platform or the ideal of liberal thinkers, that you would look at all sides of an issue, that they were more accepting. And what they found was that many universities are limiting debate and limiting looking at all sides of an issue, because they're saying we reject this group or that group, and we want safe spaces for people who feel threatened by one group or another. Just think how crazy that is, how small-minded that is. And so this group of people formed the University of Austin, you can Google it, where their mission is to invite students who are looking for a university that will consider all points of views and teach about it, looking at things from all sides of an issue. Imagine that we even have to have a new university with that idea. And it's because of the examples of small-minded thinking, limited thinking, breaking out in even our higher education. And that's an example of those that are teaching and instructing thinking small-minded, because they want everyone to think like they do. Imagine if we all looked alike, thought alike, talked alike. It wouldn't be life. The whole idea of this existence is to bug us, to get us to consider other ideas, to learn and grow from others, to ask, how'd you come to that conclusion? What are some of your ideas on that? Where did you get this idea? What were the facts you used to come to this conclusion? I just would like to understand it, all sides of the issue. And then you don't have to change your mind, but you could consider it. You could consider it. And if we don't learn as a society to overcome it and become more productive, healthier, then the outcome, it could be devastating to our economy and our country. This is supposed to be a country of free thinkers and freedom. And when you look at authoritarian societies and dictatorships and some of the despotic societies of the past, you can see what happened. It started with closed-minded, small-minded thinking. But in one's life, imagine the only person you can manage is you. Imagine if you're not investigating all sides of an issue, not open to other people's ideas and conclusions, maybe even not open to someone pushing back on you and saying you might be full of shit, pardon my French somewhere. I wrote the book, You Might Be Full of Shit If. And then I also wrote, You May Be Full of Number Two, After All, We Know Better, the woke edition. And I'm not poking fun at everyone or anyone. What I'm talking about is we have to consider all the places where we're just small-minded and not modeling what we live in. We live in something infinite, a miracle. Do you think the creator of this, whatever you call it, is a small-minded thinker? I ask people that on my various podcasts. Does that sound like small-minded thinking? It doesn't mirror what we live in. We live in something infinite. We live in something infinite. And so to have unlimited abundance, success, and love in life, it's about beginning to question ourselves. Like Osho wrote in his book, Your Answers Questioned. So to begin the journey of how to discover where you've got small-minded thinking, it's a different look at life. Number one is you begin to accept all of life as gift, especially the people and the moments that bug you. The Western society today, we want to run away from everything. And if resistance is building your muscle for living, running away from it just delays your gain if you stayed with it and made the inquiry. All right, what is this here for? For me to learn from. How can I learn and grow? What can I do differently? How can I change? Why does this person bother me? Maybe they're mirroring you. Maybe you've been just like them. If you accuse someone of being an obnoxious idiot, have you ever been one? Perhaps this other people. But you thought you were right. Maybe you blew up in a supermarket or at a retail clerk or at a customer service line where you weren't getting what you wanted and you let them know. I gave them a piece of my mind. First, you have to develop a level of thinking above your thinking, right? Then be willing to look at life, all of life as a gift, especially the difficult moments, the places and the people that challenge you and bug you. Because why else are they there? Just to bug you. That's what most people say. That's the ones who rail at others on Twitter or Facebook. They're just making people wrong so they can be right. And after all, they think they know better. They know better. I mean, even COVID, for example, that's an event certainly out of our control, like a tornado or a hurricane or those events in life, tragedies, and we've all had them in our families. But our response to them is what their purpose is. And you can just look at COVID, for example, where one set of experts was being listened to. They're the experts, they're science, but there's always other opinions. There were other groups of experts shut down by social media, by tech giants who, after all, they think they know better. They're woke. Even in the news, take journalists today. They're not reporting facts anymore, especially in cable news. They're not required to anymore to have both sides of an issue. Some stations do, but most don't. They're just commentary. They're not news anymore. If you're listening to them to get the news, that might be blindly following anything. They're supporting a narrative. So they report something that fits what the message they'd like to send to all of us, because after all, they know better. To think that the American people can't make decisions, if we got the facts on COVID, we would all make our own choices. Government's job really is to help us live, not keep us from dying. We're all going to die. I hope it's not before this video ends in 12 minutes. I hope you live a long life. So you begin to accept and embrace all of life as a gift, and that we're in a miracle, something infinite that we don't truly understand, instead of railing against every event that doesn't fit your picture. And then instead of escaping with drugs or alcohol or sex or binge watching or whatever it is we escape with in Western societies, so many video games, there's just so many places that we have for an escape. Of course, drugs and alcohol are big ones. And it's people running away from what is. They're railing that life isn't fair. It sucks. Really? Okay. That's one way to look at it. That's okay. Until you come to another conclusion, though, your life won't change. So it's been said that living in a universe, what you resist persists. And what that means is until you get the lesson, you're going to keep getting the opportunity to rail against it, to be the victim, to tell the story to everyone. Whoa, what's happening to me? You can't believe. And typically we find people who will say, you think that's bad? Listen to what I'm going through. It's all BS. It's a story we're telling ourselves. So you begin to embrace life. You develop a level of thinking above your thinking, and you can reverse that order, by the way. It could be first you begin to embrace life, and then you develop a level of thinking above your thinking. Or you could develop a level of thinking above your thinking, start to notice where you react, record and journal the people that bug you, the things that bug you, where you think your life is out of whack, and then begin to think, okay, what's it here to teach me? How can I learn and grow? How can I change? Because you're the only one you can control. You can spend 40 minutes railing against someone on the internet that you disagree with, but are you really going to change their mind? No, you're going to make them angrier and close them off even more. If you're on the job and doing those things, again, right, you begin to notice where you react and who you react to. Are you open to pushback? If you're a leader, are you making people wrong? If you're gossiping about others in management meetings or other departments, or oh, this one just doesn't get it, just think what you're modeling as a behavior. You won't have people that speak up around you. In fact, if you say, well, I'm surrounded by yes people, that's you modeling that behavior. You're creating that. So you begin to be willing to go to the neuro gym. I challenge you to do that. Start to look at who bugs you and what bugs you. Look at where you're small-minded, narrow-minded, and be willing to listen to all sides of an issue before you decide. Eventually, you may decide, but you also may change your mind. I was once a Democrat, then a Republican, now I'm an independent. That's what works for me now. I personally think we should have 3 or 4 or 5 viable parties so that Congress would have to be filled with negotiation to find a majority. It would work much better than both sides that we have now making each other wrong and pointing fingers. Gridlock. We're stuck. That's what it leads to. But it leads to gridlock in your life. It leads to gridlock in your life when you're not looking at how you can grow, what the gift is of things that bother you and people that bug you, and wanting everyone to think like you and railing against those that don't and making others wrong. So then you continue the neuro gym by the journey itself. You continue to look at things that bug you and people that bug you because it doesn't go away. There is no destination. So I challenge you, begin working on your small-minded thinker wherever you notice it. Begin to develop that level of thinking above your thinking. Begin to consider all sides of an issue and perhaps changing, maybe, and see what occurs. Prove it to yourself. That's my challenge. Begin to experiment with your thinking. Question your answers and see if it changes your life. See if it makes a difference. Don't take my word for it. Now, how did I come to that idea? Well, on November 13th, 2002, I was doing a seminar for a national sales training program that I owned the license for, like a franchise. 1 second I was fine, never had any symptoms. I was 50 years old the month before, and the next second I needed an ambulance. That's how quick it occurred. And I was grateful. I remember thinking, even getting in the ambulance, I was grateful. I had this feeling that this was going to be a flood or a forest fire in my life, that new growth would occur. And I had been studying the power of gratitude, which is another exercise to find things you're grateful for every day and to be present and mindful. But let me finish telling the story. 5 days later, in intensive care, I flatlined. I had an anterior myocardial infarction, and I was on the other side. I went from this to that. We should call death what's next. And we live so afraid instead of living because I only had the moment. That's what I learned. And I won't tell the whole story of being on what's next on the other side, but I was one with the infinite. I can tell you that. And I'll just give you this snippet. There was only the now. There was no past or future. Eventually, I was back in intensive care. I survived and later learned I had survived 2 major events. Acute necrotizing pancreatitis. My pancreas has a blockage in the duct, a calcium blockage, probably hereditary or dietary, or a combination of both. And then 5 days later, I had the heart attack, the major heart attack. And today I'm symptom-free, 19 years later. A miracle, living in a miracle, and given the gift of the power of now, the presence of being in the now, the power of it. And that's another way to overcome narrow, small-minded thinking is to look at life as what Eckhart Tolle says. He says when you fight life, life fights you. And he also says some people think reality is nuts, which means when something comes across your plate, some event occurs or some person that really bothers you, or something occurs that has to change your day or change the hour. He says instead of fighting it and being angry, to say, oh, this must be the plan, to surrender into the moment. Well, I can tell you, we live in a miracle. I can tell you from my experience that there's a what's next, and it's amazing. It's far beyond the acorn brain. And I can tell you, none of this small minded thinking was with me when I was one with the infinite for that brief time. That's what taught me how small minded my thinking was. When I got back in intensive care, and by the way, I was in the hospital for another 95 days, 55 straight, and 40 out of the next 60, and 6 months out of work. And all of it was a miracle. A miracle. And it taught me we live in a miracle, and that the now is the most important thing, and that to be able to surrender to it, and that none of our small minded thinking, none of our judgments go with us. None of our little tiny things that we think make us so important. No job titles, certainly none of my material possessions, and nothing that I used to think made a difference. Having written books or owned homes or having job titles, none of that is mentioned in your next life, in what's next. So we have to get over ourselves. We have to get over small-minded thinking. We have to get over our acorn brain. That's the gift of it. That's our journey. We're here to learn and grow and overcome all this small-minded thinking that bombards us, at least me, every day. And I teach about it. That's the gift. 20 years ago, 19 years ago, November 18th, I got that gift of learning how small-minded my own thinking was and how small-minded our thinking is as humans. I mean, we even break things down by religion, by race, by country, by nationality. There's one race, the human race. That's a place where we could overcome small-minded thinking by stopping the definition of things by race. We're the human race. We all have a responsibility to leave everyone and everything a little better than we find them, no matter their thinking, their nationality, or their race, is to look at how you want to be treated and treat everyone that same way. That's how we'll improve things. And it's first believing that we have to overcome this, that that's our job, to become more magnanimous in our thinking, not pusillanimous. Look it up. Stingy, tight in our thinking. That's the acorn brain, the magnanimous brain, the limitless thinker, the infinite thinker, models that which made this universe that we live in. So I challenge you to go out each day and in each moment to look at where you're reacting, how you're just wasting your time trying to change others and railing against things that don't fit with you and getting angry at events and certain people when they could be the gift that could change your life. But prove it to yourself. Never follow anyone blindly or anything. And I can tell you, if I ever say I found the way, run away. But check with me in 6 months. See if I've regained my sanity. Any questions? Steve at stevelentini.com. Steve at Steve Lentini. I'll spell it. Steve at Steve L is in Linda. E-N is in Nancy. T is in Tom. I-N-I.com. I'm glad to help. It's what I do. Thanks.